Imagine a world where one man claims to speak for God, and another man calls him a liar. Where Christendom tears itself in half, and every soul in Europe must decide who holds the keys to heaven and who wears a stolen crown. For nearly 40 years, there were two popes. Each called the other a fraud. Each excommunicated the other's followers, and each claimed to be the one true vicar of Christ. But they couldn't both be right. Could they? Tonight, you're stepping into the rift where faith met fracture and a single church became a battlefield of thrones. Now let the urgency begin to soften. Let the fires of outrage cool into candlelight. The shouting fades into parchment whispers. We leave the papal throne rooms behind and return for just a moment to the silence before the storm, when unity still held, and the ground beneath the church had only begun to crack. It began in Rome, or maybe Avignon, or maybe it began centuries earlier in the quiet accumulation of grievances no one dared name aloud. But one thing is certain: by the end of the 14th century, Christendom was split not by heresy, nor by plague, nor by war, but by the unbearable weight of two crowns that claimed one throne. This wasn't just a political struggle. This was spiritual vertigo. To believe in the wrong pope was to risk eternal damnation. To kneel before the wrong altar was to worship at the feet of a pretender. And to live during this rift was to question for the first time in centuries whether the church could fracture without breaking forever. You'll find no easy answers here, but you will find trails, clues etched into letters, councils, coins, and coronations. So bring a quiet mind, bring patience, and most of all, bring questions. Before we venture further into the shadows, take a moment to subscribe so you never miss a secret that history has tried to forget. The bells rang in St. Peter's with a tone neither triumphant nor sorrowful, but uncertain, like a voice unsure of what it was meant to say. Pope Gregory XIII was dead. The last Avignon pope had breathed his final breath in Rome, and with him died a fragile balance that barely held Christendom together. His death on March 27, 1378, did more than end a papacy. It unclasped the only hands holding back the tide of division. Gregory had been a man caught between two cities, Rome and Avignon, each clawing for his loyalty. Though born French and drawn to the Avignon court's comforts, he had answered calls to return to Rome, urged by voices like Catherine of Siena, who believed the papacy belonged in the Eternal City. He complied reluctantly and perhaps fatally. By the time of his death, Rome was crumbling under neglect and the weight of expectation. His return had not healed the church, it had exposed its fault lines. What followed his death was not mourning, but maneuvering. The College of Cardinals now faced a choice that would define the next 40 years, and almost every one of them was French. Their loyalties had been tested by Gregory's return to Rome, and now that he was gone, they were caught between their roots and their robes. Rome demanded a Roman pope. France wanted to reclaim Avignon. The cardinals, 15 in total, mostly French, held the power to decide where the church's heart would beat next. And in their silence, power swirled around them like smoke seeking a flame. The Roman people were not interested in nuance. They gathered outside the conclave with righteous fury and not so subtle threats. Cries of, "We want a Roman pope," or at least an Italian, echoed through the streets. This was no mere political demonstration. It was a reminder of how dangerous theology became when mixed with neighborhood pride and a taste for revolution. The cardinals cloistered in their conclave heard it all and trembled. But here's where the history books often glide too smoothly. The death of Gregory XIV is treated as a simple baton-passing moment. Yet obscured within Vatican correspondence are hints of panic and coercion. Some cardinals may have feared for their lives. Others may have plotted to use the chaos. And among them, there were whispers that perhaps no election at all could hold legitimate weight if it was conducted under duress. This raises a stubborn and fascinating question, one that scholars still wrestle with. If a pope is chosen under threat, can he truly be pope? Canon law offers no easy resolution. It's not like there's a holy undo button. Once the white smoke rises, even if fear choked the chimney, the world watches for the name. The moment is etched into time. And so, with hesitation and haste, the cardinals would soon name their next pope. But before that white smoke, there were secret meetings. Not all cardinals stayed in their corners. Some whispered promises behind pillars. Others wrote letters that mysteriously vanished. A curious letter found in the Vatican secret archives, dated just days before the election, references a cardinal fearing an explosion of the mob or an even greater betrayal within our own circle. Whether that explosion came from outside or within is unclear, but the fear was very real. And here's the irony that never stops being delicious. Gregory XV's greatest hope had been to return the papacy to Rome as a gesture of spiritual unification. He believed that by dying on Roman soil, he'd end the scandal of the Avignon papacy and heal the church. Instead, his death became the hinge on which the door of schism was ripped off its hinges entirely. It's easy to picture him now, silent beneath his tomb, listening to the chaos that erupted in the vacuum he left behind. Perhaps he thought he was a peacemaker. Perhaps he was just the last man holding a crumbling wall. Of course, hindsight does what hindsight always does, it pretends clarity. But at the time, the church was not heading into a crisis. It was already in one. Gregory's death was just the flare in the night sky, brief, bright, and heralding something far darker to come. And if you listen closely in the thick Roman air of that spring in 1378, you can almost hear it, the tension tightening like a bowstring, the crowds waiting with clenched fists, and behind closed doors, the cardinals poised to choose, under the gaze of a city ready to burn. The doors of the conclave shut with a groan, but the city did not go quiet. Outside the walls, the Roman people crowded the piazza.